Hello, everyone. This is another Freedom to Feel conversation. And my guest today is George Strange. He is a community leader dedicated to intellectual wellness, helping individuals thrive in the face of misinformation and anxiety. He coaches clients in intellectual fitness, healthy habits, and a unique method of self defense rooted in philosophy and martial arts. He also advocates for men's health through support groups in the United States and Canada. So this is my brief introduction to you, George. It's not the full bio. The full bio will be at the end, as always, and also on the podcast notes. But I really love your presence here, and I thank you for saying yes. That's something that I live for, these profound conversations. I call them sacred. And yeah, of course, well, you mentioned briefly off record. We've been talking off record, and you talk about joy. Ah, that's another exploration, right? What is joy? How to cultivate it and all that. But
Right.
before we get into our topic, because there's so much to talk about that I'm so curious, how would you introduce yourself? Who is George in this very moment?
Wow. That's first of all, your introduction was really good. I appreciate that. I loved it. But it's a difficult question, but I'll answer it because I love it. It's difficult, but I love answering difficult questions. And the reason
Okay.
I say that is because usually when we try to um, when we introduce ourselves, we are very descriptive, right? You know, this is my mission, or your education. I have a degree in philosophy, political science,
Yeah.
whatever it is. I'm a personal
Yeah.
trainer, and you kind of give your resume, right? And so that's very descriptive. So obviously, you already made reference to who I am in terms of
Mhm.
my profession and what I do. Um, but I think who I am as an individual, if you strip all the other stuff, all the titles and everything else, all the physical descriptions and all that, I think I'm left with one particular, um, I'm going to call it a feeling, but it's not a feeling, but one particular feeling that tells me that I must pursue a set of moral principles and live by them. And as long as I am pursuing those moral principles and I get to the end of my life as we know it, and as long as I've done, as much as I can to continue to maintain those principles, I think that would be who I am right now. That's kind of the my I would say my most pressing kind of thing that I like to be. So we can get into this we're also becoming. We're constantly becoming someone, right? And so
Mhm.
understanding
Yes.
that we are becoming someone, we're always becoming. So the secret here is to be able to remain yourself while you're becoming somebody else. And so I think
Mhm.
that there's a little window there that gives us the opportunity to kind of be able to be more intentional about who we want to be, right? And so,
Mhm.
yeah, again, a set of moral principles, and those moral principles are in accordance with joy, and we can talk about that because it's a beautiful concept, and
Yeah.
appreciation for life, for love, for all
Mm.
the types of life in this universe. So that includes animals and plants, and of course
Yeah.
everyone else, and ourselves, our souls, and so.
Yes.
Yeah, that would be a more accurate description for who I'm striving to be, and I'm
Yes.
hoping that I'm heading in that direction.
Mm. Yes. I love this idea, as an idea and also as an embodied kind of reality that we can consciously become something. There's something. And that's something that I've been exploring lately about the soul's journey, the soul's calling, and the idea that um, in order for us to let go of the self, of the constructed idea of self, this fixed, individualized person, then we have to kind of fully realize the self. In a sense,
Mhm.
you go
Wow.
as far as you intended to go,
Yeah.
and then you become that, and then now you dissolve into the real reality that's basically the absolute, that there's no nothing there. In a sense, there's no self. We're just one with everything, the oneness that a lot of people talk about it. So how do you see that? I guess before even to get to that conversation, because the very to me is a very complex one, very deep, that I love having, and I can go hours speaking about that. But before that, how did you get here? Like being this becoming that you are in this moment. How did this happen? Was that intentional or kind of happened, led by your
Mm.
own trust?
Yeah, I love the question because it's a combination of both, right? It is, what
Oh yeah.
at least what we are aware that we control, and at least we perceive that we control, right? Oh, I want to do this in life, kind of thing, right? So
Yeah.
we might be just fooling ourselves that we're in control of that, but that's a topic for maybe another another conversation. Uh,
Yes. Yeah.
so it's partly willing it, but
Go ahead.
also being able to 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 ride the wave during the journey, right? So life will throw things at you that you didn't expect, and
Right.
so you can see it
Right.
as part of your journey, and embrace it, and try to mold it into your identity, or you can
Mm-hmm.
reject it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
believe if we
Yeah.
reject it, then we're missing the opportunity to continue to grow spiritually, right? Or as an individual.
Right. Right.
I
Right.
love that you mentioned
Mm-hmm.
the sort of the need for that sort of spiritual purity, the need to renounce the self. At the same time, that's the trick, right? This world is a paradox, right? And we are born as a walking paradox. We're a walking contradiction. And so the contradiction here, as you pointed it out very well, is we got to get rid of the self, but at the same time, we have to really get to know thyself, right? And
Yes.
that's a
First. Yeah.
theme, right,
Oh
throughout, whether it's religions, mostly
yeah.
philosophy, right? Know thyself. And
Yeah.
once you get to know thyself, now you can say,
Mm.
all right, I know myself, now I can let go of the self, right?
Yes.
It's one of those
Yes.
ironies of life.
Yeah.
So it kind of describes how I got here. So partly willing it and partly by chance. So I'll talk about the parts that I myself influence, that I will to be here.
Yeah.
And so I mentioned to you earlier that my goal in life is to remain myself while I become somebody else, right? And that's a very
Mm.
difficult thing to do,
Yeah.
because what you want to keep is, you want to keep the really cool stuff that we have, right? Who we are, the loving person that we are, the loving being, the tolerant being, somebody with a broader vision, and so on. At the same time, and I would suspect this for most of your community, most of your viewers, including yourself and I, is to be able to help, this world to become a better world, right? And so, with that in mind, the end goal is to continue to move in that direction. And so, I've always wanted to, since I was a young boy, I've always wanted to cultivate a healthy mind through thinking, right? Because to me that was always a good companion. So if I was in trouble in school, if I was in trouble with my
Yeah.
parents,
Yeah.
instead of going to a friend or reaching out for like a coping mechanism, right? Especially as you get older, you can reach for things like alcohol or drugs or something like that. Instead
Yeah.
of that, I always found a comfort in my own mind, right? It's
Mm.
try to take
Mm.
my thoughts and try to organize them in a way that would actually make me move forward, right?
Wow.
Instead of
Yeah.
rejecting it. Most people
Yeah.
say, oh, I'm overthinking, I'm overwhelmed, I don't even want to go there. And so for me, that's always been something that I've been very intentional about. And I
Yeah.
know that it creates great results, not only for myself, but for people in general. And I've been able to test that with my clients. But the whole idea there is that the more you are intentional about your thinking and your thoughts, the the healthier your inner dialogue becomes, right?
Right. Right.
And if you have a healthy inner dialogue, then you have a peaceful mind, right? You're at peace with yourself, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
most likely.
I believe it was Socrates that used to say that he would rather be out of sync with the choir. You know, when he was singing, he'd rather be out of sync with or out of tune with the choir more than coming home and be out of tune with himself, right?
Mm,
And
mm,
that's something that I really identify with. And so
yeah,
if I'm in sync, if I'm in tune with myself, then
yeah.
I can help others, right? So that's kind of the
Mm,
first thing. And
yeah,
so this is why I pursue philosophy, for example, to get a more sort of systematic way of approaching thinking, right? Different
yeah,
modes of thought.
yeah.
Um, and the by chance. So let's talk about the chance now, right? So I've always been really purposely inclined to find ways to either study or do jobs where I have to use my mind. I make a
Right.
distinction between brain and mind. Maybe if we have time, we'll get into that distinction. But I know that the brain is part of the body, and it obviously there's a connection there between mind and brain. But I focus more on the mind, right? Because that's kind of the gateway to my soul, as I believe it, right?
Mm,
And so then by chance, so when I was a teenager, I was in trouble in school all the time. You know, I didn't conform. So I was one of the little rebels. And my
yeah.
father was so wise. One day he said to me, let's go, come with me. I'll take you to, I just got to go get something done. And you just come with me for a few minutes. And he took me to a martial arts school, right?
Mm,
And then that martial arts school, and then he left me. He says, I'm going to go run an errand and I'll come back and get you. And I was there by myself and I completely fell in love with martial arts. And that
yeah.
at 13 began a love affair with martial arts. And not most people see martial arts as, kicking and punching and maybe a little bit of violence, or some people understand that it's a self-defense kind of thing. So you protect yourself. But what martial arts taught me was a system for me to be able to get that self-discipline that I needed, but at the same time to be able to communicate with myself and incorporate my body as it's also part of my communication, right?
Mm,
If that makes
yeah.
any sense. So
Yeah.
we typically think of our mind communicating through words,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But our
Yeah.
bodies are also the mind is
Yeah.
also, when the mind has something to communicate, it is our bodies that express that, right? So
Right.
if you
Right.
think of trauma, or if you think of anxiety, or if you think of an illness,
Mm,
right? The mind is saying we need to change something here, right? And if you're not paying attention, the symptoms will become physical, right?
right.
And so that
Yeah.
launched my whole. This is the martial arts has been the main lens through which I see life, right?
Yeah.
And what's beautiful about martial arts is not, again, the kicking and the punching or anything like that. What's beautiful about martial arts that if you truly embrace it, it is a way of life, right?
Mm,
It's a way of life that is based on Buddhism. It's based on the Tao, right? and
yeah.
and you live by a set of moral principles. Remember I mentioned that earlier, right? The
Yeah.
code of the
Yeah.
warrior, any way you want to, articulate that. But the
Yeah.
principles are very simple, and they usually are: first, community, right?
Yeah.
Respect for others, respect
Yeah.
for yourself,
Mm,
an ability to develop a quiet mind, right? And
yes.
also
Yeah.
develop your body too, as a way to show yourself and your mind that you can build resilience, right?
Right.
And so, as you can see, I had all the weapons that I needed there you know to go on and start my journey in life, right? And
Yeah.
so the and so this let's fast forward all the way to, I don't know, 20 2015 or something like that.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
went through a really traumatic experience. It was something that changed my life completely. And what that did is it destroyed my identity, right? So I knew who I was kind of the night before. I was a husband, I was a father, I was uncle, I was this, I was all these things. And because of this experience, almost overnight, my identity has the only thing I could retain was my name, right? That's the only thing that
Oh.
resembled who I was, right? And so that experience led to an incredible experience that I had with anxiety, right, and panic attacks. And so
Yeah.
when after a period of time when I was kind of transitioning to becoming a new person, right, and trying to remain the person I was, which was really hard, I kind of hit
Yeah.
that, the dark night of the soul, as people refer to, right? That existential
Yeah.
no man's land, that you're
Yeah.
trapped in this existential purgatory.
Yeah.
You knew who you were before, but you're no longer that. And you know
Yeah.
that you're going to be somebody else. You just don't know who that you don't know what
Right.
that's going to look like, right? And
Yes, I don't
so
know.
in the meantime, there's two things that happen. You develop an incredible amount of anxiety and fear because you're gone, right? And so your body
Yeah.
begins to give you the symptoms that your life has come to an end, right? And this is where
Mhm.
panic attacks come. And
Right.
so
Right.
I'm getting to your answer. So to your
Oh,
question.
yes.
So when I realized that what was happening to me, panic attacks are like literally like an attack. It's like the word says, like an attack,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
It's almost
Yeah.
like being sucker punched, when you least expect that somebody attacks you and you're defenseless, right? And then
Right.
you have to deal with the consequences. And
Mm.
so for a while,
Mm.
without even realizing that, one day I realized, wait, this is like a sucker punch, except as a mental sucker punch, right? Not a
Mm.
physical
Yeah.
one. But
Yeah.
nevertheless, I have to protect myself from it because I know it's going to come again. So and then I thought, well, I'm a martial artist. This is what I do every single day of my life, right? I
Yeah.
prepare
Yeah.
for the harsh times, right? For the attacks that might happen when you least
Mm.
expect them. And so
Right.
I started to assemble, you know, um, like a method of mental self-defense, right, to defend myself against the panic attacks, right? And I used the
Yeah.
principles of martial arts, and it proved to be very effective because it allowed me to get rid of my anxiety altogether in my panic attacks, right?
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so I figure, okay, it worked for me. Can this work for other people,
Oh,
right?
mm.
And
Yeah.
at the same time, as I mentioned earlier, we're a walking contradiction. So while I'm completely destroyed and unhealthy in a sense, right, from trying to recover from this traumatic experience, at the same time, I also
Yeah.
cultivate the healthy side of me, trying to eat better, continuing with my martial arts practice, you know, um, being a personal trainer, trying to maintain that, fitness, the physical fitness, and so on. And
Yeah.
so I started to practice my, as a wellness coach, right? And I had clients, and I was, coaching clients, and so I started to incorporate this method of mental self defense, right? And I realized
Yeah.
that it was a really good, it's a method that people could really tap into and utilize in order to not to just achieve their health goals, but to achieve a more profound transformation, right?
Right. Right.
So I knew it was on to something, right? And if I had to give you a summary of what that was so helpful for people, is that often when we are in the middle of a transformation, right? So most people that come to a coach, whether you're a life coach or a wellness coach or a spiritual coach, they are
Mm.
going through a transformation and they kind of need some guidance, right? They feel a little
Right.
lost, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so the fact that you apply a set of principles, again, I go back to the set of a very small set of moral principles, and then that becomes again the lens through which people see their challenges, right?
Right.
And they're able to feel like they're self-empowered, right? And so that self-empowerment is what gets them through the challenges, right?
Mm.
So that's where I'm there in terms of what I've gone through that has brought me here. Um, Maybe I'll stop there and see if you have any questions or anything that piqued your interest
God.
there.
There's so much, yeah, to unpack. But I guess what kind of is calling my attention now, and I'm becoming more curious about, is that experience that you had that
Mhm.
kind of changed everything. Can you is that that be okay to share a bit more about that
Mhm.
specific
Oh, absolutely.
experience that
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I was in a married. I was married in a relationship for 27 years, and all of a sudden it came to an end. So it's
Yeah.
funny how things happen, right? Because when it was all within about a year and a half, one of our kids. So we had three boys. The one of the kids uh, um, was diagnosed with cancer, right, with an advanced form of leukemia, right, when he had
Yeah.
just turned 20, and
Uh,
so
yeah.
that transformed everything in a relationship, right,
Oh
and
yeah.
and the priorities got shifted, everything got shifted, right, and
Yeah.
and it was at a time when we were doing good in terms of our, financially speaking, we had a stable, everything was stable, right, jobs and all that, and it was a very challenging time, and so I am naturally a caregiver. So in my family,
Mm,
I'm the one who, whether it's from my mom or my siblings or for my kids, I kind of step
yeah.
up to be that caretaker, and I
Yeah.
took on that challenge too with my son, and so I was busy with dealing with that, and when you're going through such a traumatic experience, um, this is something that can either bring a partnership closer and stronger, or it can break
Yeah.
apart. you know so
Right.
it's like the saying
Yeah.
goes,
Yeah.
it'll either make you or break you, right? And
Yeah.
unfortunately in our case it broke us, and there was no reconciliation, and
Yeah.
so as soon as now my son he's doing fine. He recovered. His cancer has been in remission for years now. It's going
Oh,
to be a decade
good.
almost. And so we got through that, but then the next step was the separation step, right? And it was a
Yeah.
brutal one, right? And I don't think anybody
Hmm.
involved in that was prepared for it, obviously. and
Right.
um and that's something that I certainly wasn't prepared for. And so when I got to that point, it was a complete loss of identity, right, overnight, basically, right?
Yeah.
And so that's something that
Yeah.
also helped me identifying what the panic attacks were, because we said earlier, the body is telling you what it's being the mouthpiece for your mind, right? So as the mind sometimes cannot communicate only through words, so it utilizes your body. And so I was developing the
Yeah.
symptoms of death, whatever that means, right? And
Right.
so I thought I
Right.
was going to die, right? If anybody with panic attacks would probably be able to agree, right? And so you
Yeah.
feel like you're dying. I thought, why do I feel like I'm dying if I go to the doctor and
Mm,
they check everything was fine, right? Heart,
yeah.
everything was fine. So obviously I'm
Yeah.
not dying. So what is the body trying to tell me? And sure enough, it's trying to tell me that one part of me died and it's time to
Yeah.
leave it behind, right?
Yeah.
And now it's time to
Yeah.
embrace the new one, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that was the
Yeah.
moment where intellectual wellness, it was that light bulb, right? because
Yeah.
because it was through that thinking that I used to embrace when I was a kid. Remember I told you that when I was a kid, I used to really find comfort in thinking and trying to figure out what was going on in a really
Right.
orderly fashion, and it did it
Right.
again, and it was there
Yeah.
for me, right?
Yeah.
So I started, that also got me on the journey to really look at um, what our mind in terms of the intellect, right? So our mind it's a very broad
Oh,
concept,
yeah.
right?
Yes.
Most of us think of the mind as part of the brain, but we also think about it as something more spiritual, something invisible, certainly. Like, where's the mind? Most people will go here or here, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's not the case, right? There's no place in the body for the mind, right? If we
Yeah.
think about it in those terms. And
Yeah.
so I began to focus more on the intellect, because the intellect is the house where thoughts live, right? And because everything is determined by our thoughts. So when we are thinking, we come up with decisions, right? And there's decisions that determine our behavior in the world and how we act in the world, with ourselves and with other people. And so
Right.
when our thinking is faulty, so is our relationship with the world. And
Mm, mm,
so I thought if this is where the thoughts live, it just makes sense to keep that house nice and neat and make sure their
Yeah.
thoughts are good. And I had the history since I was a kid that I always found comfort in thinking, right? Not shying away from it.
Yeah.
So I started to really look at the whole idea of intellectual wellness. What is that, right? And so the first thing to let your viewers know, or anybody that I come in contact with, and I mention intellectual, it kind of turns them off, because when we think of intellect, we think of a super smart person, right? We think of a
Yeah.
university professor, or some poet, or some really super smart person, right? Einstein or something like
Yeah.
that. And that's
Yeah.
not at all. I mean, if somebody wants to pursue that as a career, absolutely, right? That's a profession, right?
Mm, yeah.
But we all possess an intellect, regardless of your IQ, right?
Right.
And it
Right.
is what we do with that intellect that determines the quality of our lives, right? That can lead
Mm,
that can lead to a balanced life, a harmonious life. And so
uh,
I really started looking at the things that affect our intellectual well-being, and I realized that we live in a time where our intellect is under attack, right?
mm,
So
mm,
experts agree that about 97% of our thoughts are repetitive. So that means we're always thinking the same things, right?
yeah.
In addition to
Yeah.
that, 75% of our thoughts are negative. So it doesn't take
Mm,
much to figure out that we're always looping in this negative thoughts, right? It's,
mm,
it's it's a loop, right? A negative loop, and that can drive somebody crazy. Of course, now with social media, with so much going on in the world, we can tune that out and say, oh, that's okay, right? The problem
mm,
with that is this: there are two things that happen that I can think of right now that are very similar, that happen naturally without making any effort, and that is breathing and thinking, right?
mm, yeah.
And so, you know,
Yeah.
the both happen naturally, but typically when things happen naturally and we don't have to work at them, we take it for granted, right? And
Yeah.
so in the area of your breathing, for example, now we're very well versed. If you're in the wellness space, you're very well versed with breath work and breathing techniques, and we know how beneficial they are, right? But for the regular person, maybe it'd be, if you do an experiment, it'd be super weird to come up to a person and say, hey, I'm going to help you with your breathing. They'll probably think you're crazy, because at the moment they're breathing, right? Like, what are you talking about? I'm
Yeah.
breathing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But
Already happened.
when people don't take care of their breathing, they can easily develop a dysfunctional breathing, right? For example, mouth breathing it's a dysfunctional type of breathing, right? When people breathe
Mm,
through their mouth instead of their nose, they can
yeah.
invite many health concerns, right? Many health
Right.
conditions that can come from that, right?
Right.
And so part of somebody working with breath, is instructing people on how to do it, right? So what you do is you take basically something that you took for granted, and now you become more intentional with your breath, right?
Mm, mm, yeah.
The same thing
Yeah.
happens with your thinking, right? Our thinking is taken for granted, right? So people go, what are you talking about? I'm already thinking all day. In fact, I don't even want to think anymore, because I'm always thinking, so I don't need any help thinking, right?
Yeah.
And so, just like with your breathing, your thinking becomes dysfunctional, because, again, I talked about this negative loop, but you can also overthink, which is the equivalent of hyperventilating, right? When you're
Oh,
hyperventilating, you're over breathing. Same
yeah.
thing with your
Mm,
thoughts, right?
oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that is kind of the neglect argument, right? We neglect the intellect in many ways, because we relate it to something that has to do with reading books and being smart, and we're not really thinking that that's where our thoughts are, right? The quality of our inner dialogue,
Mm,
right?
mm, mm,
Um, then there's societal forces too that have ensured that our intellect is under attack, right? So if you look
mm,
at, for example, the way the world is today, right, in terms of politics, right? Um, Without getting political here, regardless of political affiliation for your viewers, one thing is for sure, that in the last few decades, there's been a movement that is called the anti-intellectual movement, that has instilled distrust in higher education. It has
mm,
sometimes even demonized people that are like poets and musicians and free-spirited, free-minded people, uh, independent
Okay.
thinkers. It
Yeah.
has even science has come under attack, right?
Yeah.
And the result of that is I refer to as there's been a proliferation of pseudo leaders, right? And again, we can look at our politics nowadays without getting political, but I think that there's plenty of evidence to know that
Yeah.
intelligence is under attack, right? And
Oh yeah.
so then if
Yeah.
you couple that with the fact that today more than ever we have so much access to information that one would think, well, we're super smart now, right? We're doing better intellectually. And the answer is the opposite, right? The more
Mm,
information we have, the more overwhelmed we become, and our intellect becomes more dysfunctional as well, right?
right. Right. Ah.
Um,
Wow.
and so, yeah, so this is something that happened not just particularly now, it also happened in the 1700s. During the Enlightenment period, people like Immanuel Kant wrote about that. What is enlightenment? Enlightenment was basically trying to make your own decisions from your own thinking, right? Rather than relying on what they used to call experts back in the day, whether they were politicians or priests or whatever, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
because that leads to putting too much trust on leaders that are shady sometimes, the pseudo leaders that I call, right? Because
Yeah.
it takes work to be able to figure out who you're going to follow as a leader, right? And if you're not doing the work, then you
Mm,
follow for anything. The saying goes, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything, right?
absolutely. Yes.
So that's kind of my concern with that, and I think it's something that's really needed today. And sure enough, like I do that in my practice with my participants, and it's something that they realize that they haven't even thought about. Talk about thinking.
Mm,
And now
yeah.
when they become more intentional about their thinking, they feel like they're more at peace, right? Because they have, I don't want to use the word control, but they're able to manage their thinking a little bit better. And
Mm,
thinking is something that intentional thinking happens when you're doing journaling, for example, right? When you're
yeah.
meditating, you can guide your own thoughts, right? Um,
Yeah.
and so, yeah, it's a system that helps you manage your thinking so that you can become more clear and more at peace with yourself. And that again facilitates. To me, the end goal would be to
Wow.
establish a much healthier inner dialogue, right?
Mm, yes. It. I mean, again, there's a lot to unpack there. But I would love to hear a bit more about. I know you call it I won't pronounce. I would just say FUCK anxiety as the
Right.
method. Yeah, I'll say
Yeah,
it that way. So,
yeah.
talk to me about that. Why did you choose that specific, let's say, abbreviation?
I'm
Yeah,
being
acronym.
completely honest with you here. I didn't. Now, the letters were in different orders, right? So, but then
Yeah.
when you put the letters together, right?
Oh,
So,
I see. It just came to be. Yeah.
yeah, it's a funny story because goes back to when I said that I was trying to use self-defense principles to be applied
Yeah.
to your mental self-defense, right? And so
Yeah.
so when we're talking about anxiety, we see it as an attacker, as an enemy, let's say, right? And we need to learn how to fight an enemy. Now, when I talk about enemies in martial arts, it's not always somebody you want to hurt, you want to hate. On the contrary, one of the most beautiful things about martial arts is when you bow to your opponent, you say a word in Japanese that goes onegaishimasu. That means please teach me, right? So imagine you're confronting your opponent, you're about to get your butt kicked, but instead of you hating that opponent, you're actually saying this is an opportunity for us to grow and to learn together,
Mm,
right? So you get into in a relationship with your opponent, let's say, right?
yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
Beautiful.
this is kind
Mm,
of the idea that I have for fighting anxiety. Fighting anxiety doesn't necessarily mean completely doing away with anxiety, but being able to dance with it, right?
mm,
Which is
yeah.
what fighting is all about, right? And
Yeah.
so that's the fight part, right? And so I apply the
Uh,
the self-defense principles to it, which are very simple, right? Prevention, protective, preventing, and being proactive, right? So
yeah.
anybody that's taken self-defense before for anything. You have to be preventive. You have to prevent situations where you can be in trouble, where you can be at risk. You have to be
Right.
proactive, prepare, right? And so yeah, so there's a very practical aspect of it where you train yourself, you create a habit, right?
Yeah.
So what are we fighting? We're fighting the underlying theme in all anxiety is uncertainty, right? We just don't
Mm,
know, and this is why we're anxious, right?
mm, yeah.
And so in order to
Yeah.
fight uncertainty, so that would be the FU, right? Fighting uncertainty. The C is for confidence. And confidence
Yeah.
is the opposite of uncertainty, right? When we're uncertain, we don't know, we can't make a decision, we don't have enough data to make a decision, we don't have enough information, we don't have the
Yeah.
confidence. When we know
Mm,
something, we have the inner confidence, the inner knowledge.
mm,
So K stands for our knowledge or inner knowledge, right?
right.
So
Yeah.
once we develop that nice inner dialogue and we are comfortable with and confident with our inner knowledge, now we can fight uncertainty much better, right? And so
Yeah.
again, each letter represents, a foundational pillar of the course. And yeah, that's how it came up. But again, at the beginning, it wasn't like fight. Maybe fight was the first thing, fight anxiety, but it was more like uncertainty and then knowledge and then confidence. And then before I knew it, it was spelling something. And
Yeah.
I thought
Yeah.
it was
It's
really
beautiful.
cool because I'm all about
Mm,
attitude too, right? And so
mm,
I never wanted to be the victim of anxiety. And actually,
yeah.
without saying it here, I would always use that word to describe, how I felt about anxiety, right? And so
Right. Right.
it all came together in
Uh,
the end. It's just, yeah,
no, I see. Yeah. Thank you for clarifying that. And it doesn't really matter to me. I was actually not looking for a specific answer. Just I'm very curious. So, I mean, it's just fascinating how you came to understand that and put together in that way in your mind with the intellect, kind of gathering all the information and kind of putting this in a way that's very clear to me. Because it's true, you call panic attacks, and actually heard from a spiritual teacher. He said mind attack. He said,
mm,
there's a lot of mind attacks, and then you came up with this mental self defense for the mind. That's so. I mean, I never heard of this before, so it's really something that you have become very curious about. And I don't know when I think about the intellect. I mean, I'm a student of Vedanta, which is it's the to me is the most clear system of to understand life. I studied pretty much everything, pretty much, but then Advaita Vedanta, it's so clear that it resonated with me, with my heart, with the intellect, and we can say consciousness, but I don't know. Consciousness is everything anyway, or everything is in consciousness, so there's no separation. But there's something about the intellect that when you speak about according to Vedanta, the intellect is just the part of the mind that becomes curious about something, open to knowledge, information, whatever it is. It's basically awareness itself. And then from that on, it can be developed in a sense that the mind can take a hold of it and do what you did, for example. Like
right,
you're very open. It seems to me that your intellect has been always very active. It comes across that way, listening to you and reading about you, which is beautiful because that's what we need. But then the mind then has to be trained in order to be focused and concentrate, to kind of follow the pattern, let's say the insights, the
yeah,
inspiration from the intellect. And that's where the body mind work kind of we need to train both of them. And I see
right,
martial arts being very much that. And Vedanta talks about that too. It's important to train the mind, it's important to train the body. But what I love about that philosophy, it is a philosophy, it's a spiritual philosophy, is that it's very straightforward. You're already what you're looking for. So there's no really need to give this work to the mind. You don't have to train your body that hard either. You just, the more you reflect and the more you contemplate the idea that you're already whole, infinite, you
mm,
already everything right here, right now.
Oh,
This is
love it.
it. This is it. It cannot
Yeah.
get better than this. Then something happens that the mind relaxes, the body. It's almost like they don't have to have this, this anxiety about life. We don't have to fight life itself anymore. Something happens, has been my experience. And then I think joy arises. And that's where this idea of joy, which I don't really sell, is just an idea that we can come together and celebrate life for what is in the moment.
Right.
But it's not really something that you can learn how to. It's a reality that's already here. So I don't know,
Mm.
George. That's something that my intellect really kind of has been, in a sense, kind of has been reinforced by the mind and the body. And now it's kind of this, I don't know, the embodiment of that. I don't know what you call it. It just feels so much lighter, and playful in so many ways for the mind
Hmm.
and the body. So it feels much better to inhabit, this shared reality than to
Right.
look for something specific to. Yeah. But anyway, how do
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
see that? Are you familiar with that philosophy as well?
Yeah. Yeah. Somewhat. I mean, it's Eastern philosophy, right? And Eastern philosophy is it's
Oh
martial
yeah,
arts.
right.
It's
The
it's all
Tao.
about that, right? It's all about Buddhism, and it's all about in the case of Japan, is Shinto, right? And so there's a lot of that, right? And there's a lot of course, we work with the rhythm of life. The rhythm of life is circular, right?
Mm,
And so
yeah,
and so there's a
yeah.
couple of things you mentioned that I'm dying to make a comment. So I'm going to try not to get lost in my thinking here. But
Oh, please.
so because it is circular, that also has to do with the breath, right? With the breath, and there's that rhythm of life,
Mm,
right? Where you
mm,
breathe in and you breathe out. So there's that yin and
mm,
yang, right? And
yeah.
so to speak about that, and one of the things that I really like about what you said is that in relation to anxiety as well, is that idea of that the mind is also, that's eternity to me, right? There's an eternity about the mind. The mind is not, it's not bound by the laws of physics, right? It's not something
Mm,
that you can measure like the body, and it's
right,
non-dimensional and so on. And so
right.
the mind is that connection to the eternal, right? I'm not sure
Mm,
what happens when we die, but the mind is an eternal thing, right? And your share experience that you said, right? That could be also a collective kind of mind, right? But that is
yeah.
it's really good news for anybody experiencing anxiety, because sometimes even low level anxiety has to do with our existential anxiety, right? We all know as soon as we come out of our mother's womb, we know that we're dying already, right? It's just a matter of
Mm,
time, right? So the minute we are born, we begin to die, right? Which is a beautiful thing when you
uh,
embrace life and death together. Is that circle, right? But underneath, throughout our entire lives, is that unspoken thing that we try to push under the rug. It's the fact that we know we're dying, right? And so we don't know how to deal with that. And I think
mm,
a lot of people sometimes, particularly when you go through a life crisis, right, or a trauma, that becomes intensified, right? That
oh,
existential angst becomes intensified because now you have been
yeah.
introduced to the fact that that death that we fear so much can happen anytime, out of your control, right?
Right,
And so it
right.
becomes really something there. And so to understand that that the antidote to that existential angst is actually the fact that the mind is an eternal thing, and then if you believe in eternal life, whatever religious beliefs are, then that kind of creates a harmony with the concept of existential anxiety, right? uh, and so it becomes,
Yeah.
death becomes part of life, right?
Mm,
In other words.
mm,
um, Yeah, I
yeah.
love that, what you're studying there. It's so also connected to nature, right? And
Oh
and our
yeah.
bodies are part of it too. So it's like a system. And I know this through my partner. She's an Ayurveda practitioner. And are you familiar
Yeah.
with Ayurveda?
Oh yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It's
So,
a Hindu. Yeah.
it's
It's
it's a Hindu thing, right?
Hinduism. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. It's
Yeah, through
beautiful. Yeah.
yoga, you learn that, right? And it's basically a health system, an ancient health
Yeah.
system. And
Yeah.
so it's a lot of it too is, the type of mind that you have or the type of intellect, as you were referring to, that also has a lot
Yes.
to do with your constitutions, right? Whether you're, Peta or Bata or whatever
Yeah.
it is,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Also, there's a this is no accident, but the word prana, right?
Mm.
It's the translation is always iffy, right? Like English is such a limited language in terms of
Yeah. Right.
translating a big
Sanskrit.
concept like that.
Yeah.
Sometimes other languages, maybe more Latin languages, can explain a little bit better, right?
Right.
But
Right.
by the way, I love the title of your book in Portuguese, uh,
Oh.
because you use the word heart, right? Instead of
Oh
joy is
yeah.
heart.
Right. Yes.
Yeah,
Coração. Right. Yeah.
right.
Feelings of the
That's
heart.
so
Yeah.
cool. But
Yeah.
yeah, so
Mm.
but the word prana, right? That also explains that our breath and our mind is also life, right? It's the life force. It's our soul, our spirit, right? In Japanese
So
and Chinese, it's the same thing. It's chi or ki, right? Which is life force. And so
right.
when we're doing our breath
Right.
work, we're actually tapping into that life force, which is eternal, and it's a collective experience, right? So yeah, beautiful stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting, George, how yeah, all the schools of thought and also the philosophies of spirituality, the teachings, the spiritual teaching, they all come together to one powerful message that we are not what we think we are, that we are not just physical, that there is more to it. So they all talk about the same things.
Yes.
But the thing is about oh, I lost you for a moment here for some reason. You still there, George?
I'm still here. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah. I cannot see you. Oh, yeah, you're back now. I can
Okay,
see you. I can see you again.
awesome.
So I was like, oh, what am I talking to? So I didn't know you were there. So when I think they're all a lot of the psychology in philosophy deals a lot with the finite, right? That's with the things that come and go. Even science, you see that too. It studies, it's very objective. It's about studying the laws of nature, how it changes, how so it's all about the changing, even though when we speak of the mind, the continuation of the mind, that reincarnation
Right.
and being eternal, as you said, um, all that, it kind of feels very transient still. But if the mind comes and goes, that means that we were here before. Which when I was very little, I remember like looking at myself and say, "Wait a minute, you're here again, like a girl now in a woman's body." So as if I knew that I was in a male body before, that I had different lifetimes before, and that kind of so strange, the kind of idea that we can remember lifetimes, not precisely. I guess some people can do that, but not all of us. But even then, one of the things that really caused my attention, it will end. Like it's still finite. Even if you keep roaming from lifetime to lifetime, and our intellect survives. It might be a part of the mind that we call the soul survives, and then still roaming from body to body, going from one body to another. Even realms, people believe in different, or maybe it is true. I don't know. I think we have evidence for different lives in different planets and realms.
Right.
And why not, right? It's possible, very much possible. If this is possible, I think anything else is possible.
Right.
People having this experience here. So, but one of the things that really my intellect is very interested in is that which doesn't change. That's
Mm,
always the same. It never changes. Uh, in a way, it cannot be seen, cannot be touched. It's not a thing in the first place. It can only be sensed, not by the senses, by the five senses, the physical, the sensory perception, but it can be clearly kind of observed in a subtle way. Even when we, like Vedanta explains in the most sophisticated way, the way we go to sleep at night, and if we actually fall asleep and never come back from a night's sleep, that means we believe something else, right? That another reality is true now.
yeah.
Oh,
Right.
when believe that our dreams was like a reality. So there are sub-realities, so many of them that we can clearly see, even when we are daydreaming, meditating, that the mind goes to, I don't know, just different realms that we it's almost like I'm not here anymore. Like even having this conversation now, it feels very different. So all that means that that's the realms that change. The mind changes, the body would change, even the realities can change, but there is one ultimate reality that will never change, and that's what we are. Not who, but what. And that's what my intellect has been very interested in, and maybe that's why I keep going back to it. Of course, my mind is dancing within the finite. And that's why I have these conversations and I have this platform and all these things that it does. But that's within the realm of experience and almost like a dream reality. And then why not make the dream, beautiful? I think it would be very diluted, I think, to try to make this reality here, even if it is a sub reality, a dream reality, make it worse, make it a nightmare. And some humans do try that, make this worse. And maybe for the reason you said, because they are not aware, of their mind content, their intellect.
Right.
So yes, do you want to make a comment about that?
Yeah. Well, oh man, there's a lot to unpack there. That's beautiful.
Yes.
I love that. Yeah, the whole trying to understand that there's something that never changes. I
Yeah.
mean, it's totally understandable that we need to really grasp the idea of beginning and an end, because we're bound to a body that has that trajectory,
Mm.
right? There's an expiry date.
Yeah,
And
the body,
so
yes.
everything that we observe through our senses, as you said, in the world has to go that. However, the one thing that remains constant and never changes is the fact that change will always happen, right?
Mm, mm,
So perhaps it is change that is something that will always continue to happen. And that change is maybe what you're referring to, these different rounds and different, even within dreams, right? There's always change. And this is why it's so beautiful too, because to me, I think that there's never an end to anything. There's always another
uh,
possibility, another possibility. You
uh,
can dream it, as you said, you can think it, right? You can hope
oh
it.
yeah.
You can also hope. So let's say that your thoughts have a
Oh
limit
yeah.
and you're like, okay, I can't think any beyond this, right? So I
Hmm.
hope that
Yeah.
there's more than that. And that hope carries you to another plane, right? And so
Mhm.
so that in itself is eternity, right? The fact that change is constant, that in itself is the unchangeable, right? And so
Uh,
so
uh,
I think that change is important for us to understand as human beings, because we have to face it every single day. However, so let's talk about healing, right? Sometimes when we
yeah.
talk about healing, sometimes I love the word healing because it almost
Mm,
implies that you have graduated from a period of harshness and a very difficult period, and now you've graduated to a level where you feel like you've been able to conquer that, right? um,
mm,
However, I
yeah.
don't know that that's the case, because I think
Yeah.
that we're always becoming something else. So the healing is really a becoming. Now you're somebody else, and the trauma or whatever you are healing from has been left behind, right? And now you
Mhm,
continue your
mhm,
trajectory, because there will be
mm.
other traumas, right? As soon as we're done with one, there might be
Oh
another
yeah.
one just lurking
Oh yeah.
around the corner, right?
Oh yeah.
And so it's just never ending journey when it comes to that. So yeah, I love
Mm.
when you talk about dreams too. I read an excerpt from your book when you talk about dreams. I think it's "What Is Love," right? That's the book that you talk about dreams.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
based on
yeah.
non-duality. Yeah.
And then duality, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, realization. I love that term. I mean, and being a philosopher, I really love that term.
Mm, mm.
It's really neat, and I think it really coincides with what I'm saying, that we are born a contradiction. And you know how people sometimes, like, they try to, you know try to they really try to break their brains trying to figure out what the purpose of life is,
Mm.
and to
Oh yeah.
me, this is only my thing. I don't know that I have an answer, but to me, because we're born into a world of contradictions, and we ourselves embody a contradiction that's particular to us as individuals, our goal in life or purpose in life is to, by the end of our life, hopefully our physical life, we have been able to somewhat reconcile that contradiction, right? That internal
Mm,
contradiction.
yeah,
And
I love that.
and it's different for everybody. And I think
Yeah.
that's also connected to change, right? Because as you are moving through that, through reconciling that contradiction, you're also experiencing changes, right? But again,
Mm,
the secret is to also be able to remain yourself. A lot of people lose that, right? Lose that aspect of self, and they become somebody else, forgetting about
mm,
who they were.
mm. Wow, that's yeah. I wanted to make this comment. Well, one of the most kind of obvious observations that we can make when it comes to change and all that is that's what I say. I'm the most for some reason my intellect is very interested in that, what doesn't change, but because it's very obvious too, though, according to Vedanta and the training, I mean the whole system that I went through is just so clear. Remember, you've been talking your story. I wrote a whole book about my own story, but isn't it fascinating that even though you went through all the changes that you went through, that you felt like you had a life, and then you kind of, oh, now I'm a complete different person, something died here. Just if you pay attention really closely, you see that you, the real you, the one that doesn't change, is the one that observes what changes. That's
Oh,
the real you.
say it again. I
That's
love
the
what you
real
just said
you.
there. Yes.
Yeah, that's the real you. That's the one that knows all the changes. Oh, my hair, I'm getting older. And I was a little boy now. I was a little girl. Now I'm this. My mind changed. Now I don't think the same way that I thought 10 years ago. Oh, now I am. See, this is the becoming type of thing that we call becoming, because
Right.
there's something here that's paying attention to the evolution of what the experience, experience of
Right.
body. Yeah, so that's what I'm, something in me, it keeps saying, wait a minute, that's what is real. The one that knows, that's paying attention to all the changes, that knows,
Mm,
I mean, literally knows everything that changes, but it doesn't really interact with it. It just, it not even observes. It's almost like it becomes change at some point, and then sometimes we even lose contact with the unchanging because we are so into the experience, like when we're in the moment or in the body. It feels like we are, you are this man, I am this woman, and now the tree is the tree and all these things. But in reality, it's just as non-localized, and it's everywhere, or everything's in it, and it's will never change. That's if we can go from lifetime to lifetime, playing this game of illusion in a sense that is it's just experience, and then experience, like, it's illusion, is illusory because it comes and goes. It doesn't stay. It's
mm,
not fixed. So
right.
why would any, if we are really in a sense like I don't know, they call enlightenment, but I also call health. I think that really is a healthy way to see reality. This reality is just as an adventure, as it will change anyway. So don't grasp, don't hold on to anything. And I think
Right.
that's what they say when people have mental health issues, and a lot of, I think because of the intellect, that part that doesn't change became so identified, and I don't know, almost like hypnotized by experience,
Mm, right.
that forgets itself. It forgets that you never change. You can never be touched by time because
Right.
you're timeless. You are
Yeah.
the infinite, having this
Yeah.
experience of, I don't know. Does it make sense to you? Because that's quite out there for a lot of people. You
Right.
probably have heard. Yeah, you
I
probably
love
have
it.
heard
Yeah,
about it.
it totally makes sense to me. And when you touched on mental health, right? It's we tend to resist, and a lot of people do resist that change, right? And
Oh
when
yeah.
you're resisting something, you're trapped
Yeah.
in it, right? And you
Yes.
continue to experience the same thing, right? And so you trap yourself into that, and that becomes even
Yep.
more something that's temporal, and it's something that's there and occupies a space and time,
Mm-hmm.
and you can't
Yeah.
seem to get rid. And then all of a sudden, it's something that you are looking to get rid of, and so it becomes part of you in a very
Mhm.
negative way.
Right.
And so this is why, I guess, particularly with Eastern philosophy in general, the letting go is so important, right? Letting
Oh
go of
yeah.
something and trusting
Yes.
that you will remain. See, that's the thing. You also say that the
Mm.
observer, right?
Yes. Yeah.
The fear
That
here
you
that I have,
remember.
I mean, yeah, I'm being honest. I
Not
am so
change.
afraid to forget who I am because shoot, all
Mm.
this work that
Mm.
I've done to try to carry myself all the way to here, and if I forget
Yeah.
all of a sudden, then it's going to
Yeah.
be starting all over again, right? And by then I'm
Mm.
going to be too
Mm.
exhausted. So yeah, so
Mm.
it's definitely. Um,
Mm.
and I don't know. I really don't have an answer to as how to get around that for some people. Maybe it's just something that they need to
Yeah.
experience on their own. But I think
Yeah.
what you and I are saying, I think what you're saying is totally true that there's that observer that's constant, right? And
Yes.
I
Never
call it
changes.
the kind
Yeah.
of the lifeline, right? So you're always, that coherence that you're the same person that you were when you were 5, 10, 20,
Mm.
40,
Mm.
whatever. If you
Yeah.
recognize that that's the same person, but now you're at this stage in life, that I think
Yeah.
it's really difficult for people to achieve
Mm.
because people are always thinking
Yeah.
in stages, right? In very rigid stages. And
Yeah.
okay, now I get married because I'm 20 or whatever. Now I got to get a job because I'm this, and so they compartmentalize their life like that. They
Mm.
go from
Mm.
one box to another, and it's really
Right.
difficult then to be able to have that constant observer, right?
Right.
um,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
So
That's
the
it. Yeah.
trajectory it's a smooth trajectory, um, if you're always aware of the self, right?
Yes, that's it. And it's that's why it's a training. Yeah. It is a training. So that's a train of the intellect. Once the intellect is kind of it's almost like the intellect now the eye sees it sees the eyes like it's almost like in Sufism they call the turning of the heart. So now it's almost like the intellect it's instead of trying to project things like more ideas to be created in the illusory world in the sense of changing world, it now turns to itself and says, wait a minute, you don't change. You keep, you just kind of you have these amazing ideas, you have so many ideas, so many insights, beautiful inspiration, but you don't change. Wait a minute, you're always the same. That's when it's almost like the mind. Well, in Vedanta, they say it's just basically God recognizing itself. So you are God recognizing yourself. And that's the
Mm,
most beautiful moment, yeah, when you see yourself as the creator, the creation and the creator, you both.
mm,
So
I
you
love that.
there's no separation anyway. So now you're one. And if you can do that, at some point, then now the experience of changing it becomes a lot lighter and playful, where you're not so caught in experience anymore. I mean, you still dance, you still feel pain and all whatever that comes with the body, and it's okay. And then, but you know the difference. You know that you just you you're beyond that, or you are kind of. It's happened in you, so it's not that you are lost in it, it's happened in you. So
Yeah.
you are always the ground, the powerful. I mean, it's not even powerful because it's everything. Includes power and
Yeah.
weakness. It includes both. So
Yeah.
it's just everything. It's and it's beyond a philosophy to me, George. Really, it is truth with capital T, all capital letters. And
Right.
maybe, I mean, feels that way as a feeling and also as a sensing. I mean, everything kind of just turns me back to it. I
Mm,
can't, it's almost like I can't unsee anymore. I cannot go back. And I don't
wow.
know what that means. I don't know what that means, not going back. It's the unknown. It's like living the unknown. I don't know. Something like that.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I think because ultimately what we all do. And so growth, whatever you want to call it, right? Growth continues, right? And so you're not the same person anymore. And that happens intellectually, happens physically, right? We're always, changing to adapt to the new reality, right? So I love when you
Yeah.
talk about the observer and the subject, and and all that being one, right? I think that's, to me, I haven't really given it too much thought, but to me, I think that that's the prerequisite to really not understand intellectually and not feel it in your body. I'm talking about love. In order for you to say, see, the only word that our language gives us is understanding or grasping. So I'm going to use the word
Yeah.
grasping, although that's not the right term because it's not something that you can put into words. But that's when you really go, oh, this is what love is, right? When you can get to that
Mm,
singularity, when
mm.
the observer and what's being observed are one and the same.
Is one. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Mm, yeah.
It's a type of love and respect that is so pure
Mm,
and have no boundaries, that you're even flirting with the idea that you yourself are God, right? Within
yeah.
yourself, right? And
Well,
so,
everything is. Yeah. Yeah. Everything
and
is
everything
God. Yeah.
else, right?
Yeah. It's not
And
just
if
that you
that's
with
the
me.
case,
Everything.
exactly, yeah, not just you as an individual. And if that's the case, then we begin to look at, everything, including ourselves, as something that needs to
Mm,
be not only respected, but something that needs to be completely um,
that's
assimilated.
it.
I don't even know what the word would be. Something that needs to be loved. I guess there's no other word for it, right?
Honored. Yeah. I like honored, but it could be different. Yeah.
Honored.
It's to
Yeah,
be honored.
that's a good one, right?
Mm. Everything's sacred. Yeah. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
So that's the practicality of that realization, of that understanding. It's not really an understanding because there's a separation there. If you understand something, so
right,
you're realizing that you are the observer and the observed. So you
right,
both. So now it's yeah, and then in practical living, we would say that we don't harm anything. Yeah, we really become very naturally. We're not trying. It's just you don't try anymore. You just kind of treat everything meets sacredness as sacredness, like sacredness meeting sacredness. So
yeah,
all your interactions, it feels that way to me. It's easier said than done when it comes to let's say patterns. Like once you have been, it's like a bicycle. If you've been, I usually say that when you've been, kind of riding the bicycle in a high speed, and then you kind of jump out of the bicycle will still continue. So I
right.
think about the body that way in the mind because I have given so much work to the mind to do. Even this work that I do is a lot of work. And now it feels like the bicycle needs to keep running on its own. I'm like, without
That's a
me,
great
but
analogy. I
it
love that.
without that sense, yeah, strong sense of me. But it still goes, it goes on, and you get and sometimes you get people to judge, and say, oh, you charge for the interviews that you do, and then it's okay, to be judged because it's not. It's almost like it doesn't matter anymore in essence. But when you speak of love, yes, that would be ultimately that's what love is. Yeah, it's freedom. So, I mean, freedom to love, like in that sense, so purely that you're not really grasping at anything anymore. Somebody upsets you or tries to, you just let go pretty quickly, and it
Hmm.
doesn't really stay. And then also freedom because this is what this is, isn't it? If there's no beginning, no ending, then we're just kind of. And why not? Some people they ask, if God could just, it's so powerful. Why are we having limited, weak, painful experiences? Doesn't make
Right.
sense. Well, the answer that was given is that why not? Why not? Why
Yeah.
not?
Yeah.
Why can God can be vulnerable too? It's the vulnerable God. I think that's the most beautiful thing that I have heard. The vulnerable God is
Yeah. I
very
never heard that
vulnerable,
before, and I
and
love it.
that's
Yeah.
me too. I was like, oh my God, I love that. The vulnerable God. Yeah, that's what it really resonated deeply with me. Like, yeah, we are all gods and we are all vulnerable. and that's okay.
Absolutely, yeah. Because if if as the saying goes, if we're made in the image of God, right, then that
Mm,
vulnerability
mm,
that humans are plagued with, right, would be to part of
yeah,
a godly existence, right, a godly
yeah,
being for sure. Yeah,
yeah.
I agree with that idea of freedom. It's true raw freedom, right? It's not the freedom that with that
No,
we think about when we think about politics or or
yes, no,
happiness, right? Freedom that you
no.
have resources and choices, or freedom to move around, whatever. No, this is the raw
Yeah, there's a
freedom, and the
concept.
raw freedom, yes, can also be pretty scary too, right? Because now it's up
Hmm.
to you to do something with it, right? And I think that
Yeah.
also speaks to that existential anxiety. Now, in
Mm-hmm.
fact, the existentialist philosophers used to call it anxiety is the dizziness of freedom, right? It's kind of like the side
Hmm.
effect of freedom.
Hmm.
And they didn't mean freedom as in freedom to vote or whatever, speak your mind. It was, again, this raw freedom. Now you're here. Now you get to figure out life. You have to figure out
Hmm.
everything. It's kind of what you and I are doing and what you do in your conversations with people. We're trying to figure out life, right? And that is a very daunting task because there's a lot to figure out. And it can really be, for some people, is like, oh, forget it. I don't even want to go there. It's too much, right? But
Hmm.
for those of us
Yes.
who want to persist, I
Oh,
think
yeah.
it's if we
Mm.
get to that point where we begin to enjoy some of that, that feeling of love, or the idea
Yes.
of that freedom, that raw freedom, we're totally okay with the negative aspect of freedom in quotations, right?
Mm. The freedom to yeah, that life can be anything, right?
Yeah,
And it's unconditional. You see people talk about unconditional love. I don't think that the only way that that can happen is if we come from this place of knowing that we are something that never changes. We are the infinite, limitless. This is already it. This is the as good as it gets. Then unconditional. Then from that place, yes, and then I think we can love unconditionally because it doesn't really matter what happens. We see everything as godly, as sacred.
I yeah,
Everything, every single thing, every single
yeah,
experience. So
absolutely, yeah.
now, yeah, this is freedom to me.
We're no longer judging, right? Not not in the
No,
sense that we
no,
judge, right? Yeah, we just accept it.
yeah, yes, yeah. You see, that's to me, yeah, that is still a concept because yeah, when it comes to what this freedom really is not even a concept. It just is,
Right.
right? It's just real.
Yeah.
It's just
It
real.
is. Yeah. Just as
God, George, I could talk to you forever. Would you like to make another? I want to make a comment here about the beautiful thing you have on your website about dogs. That
yeah.
really caught my attention too. You support dog rescues
Mhm.
organizations,
Yeah.
and for the reason that you said, you even said that dogs they love unconditionally. So you
Right.
mentioned that there too, that they are awesome. I have it here in front of me. I'm reading it. They are the
Yeah.
best emotional support. They are always there for us, but unfortunately, sometimes we just abandon them,
Right.
and then you give him back. So what a beautiful treat, a soul treat, sacred treat. Yeah,
I love
thank
that.
you.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah,
Thank you.
talk to me
Well,
about
yeah.
that for a moment. Oh, I love that.
Sure. Yeah. So to me, again, when we are um, creating, I guess, facilitating improvement for people, right? In the wellness space, right? Whether we're coaching or guiding
Yeah,
somebody to take them to a better place, right? Um, it's not just so let's say myself as a coach and the client that I'm working with. It's a community, right? And that community
mm,
involves other
yeah,
things, right? So it could be if we are in nature, for example, right? If the person begins to, they go for, things like forest bathing, right? Where they really
yeah,
embrace nature, right? Which is part of their, their healing or part of their journey. Then nature is
yes,
involved in also contributing to that healing, right? So it's not
yeah,
just the person and the coach, right? It's nature now. It's
right.
has been recruited to assist in the healing, right? Now, dogs are
Yeah,
the same things, particularly with anxiety. Dogs are, I don't know if you have a dog. I'm a dog person.
I
Are you a
do.
dog
I
person as
have a
well?
dog.
Okay.
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So now you know what I'm talking about, right? So dogs are like
Yes.
these, angels, right? They're truly angels. They're
Mm,
pure beings. They're there to give you
mm,
love and support. They're watching you all
right.
the time just to learn how they can serve you better, right? And it's
Yeah.
that's that
Yeah.
unconditional love. And so when I was experiencing the worst type of anxiety, although I had a
Yeah.
good, I had a therapist and I had a network of support, right? the
Yeah.
the best support that I could ever get was my two little dogs at the time, right? Because they
Mm,
were there for me at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, right? When I couldn't call anybody else, right? And they were there
yeah.
and they knew exactly how I was feeling and they knew how to get me back to normal, right? And
Yeah.
and again,
Yeah.
if you're a dog person, then you know what I'm talking about, right? There's
I
that
do. I
that
love my
healing
dog.
power, that because we're all part of nature and dogs are part of nature, except that we somehow separate ourselves from nature, right? We live in houses and things like that, whereas dogs are more in tune with nature still, right?
Yeah.
Even though they're
Yeah.
domesticated. And so they are that bridge between nature and ourselves, right? Because a lot
Yeah.
of the trauma they
Mm,
experience, or a lot of the confusion and a lot of the pain that we go through when we're experiencing something, is because we're disconnected with nature, right? And
mm,
so
mm.
dogs are that bridge as well. So to
Yeah.
me, giving back to their community as well, I call it the dog community, it's just part
Yeah.
of the journey of healing. It's not just us. We have to acknowledge that. We talked about
Mm,
indigenous traditions at the beginning, right? And
yeah.
so we
Yeah.
this is, also always acknowledging that we don't do things on our own, like the typical mantra of Western civilization is, I'm a self-made, entrepreneur and I did everything by myself. That's baloney. You have a
Yeah.
mother, a father, you have a community, you have neighbors and animals and plants and everything that's been able to sustain your life until now and help you
Yeah.
thrive. It's just a
Right.
matter of acknowledging, recognizing that, and giving credit where credit is due, right?
Yes, beautiful. I mean, I love that. I even put in here like I love this. Yes.
Nice.
And also because yeah, dogs, animals, they're in touch with the timeless. Yeah, that
Right.
infinite.
Oh, I
You
love
know, they
that.
don't
Yes.
really know, they don't have a sense of time. They just, when they're ready to die, they just let the body go.
Yeah.
Okay. They just kind of peacefully lay down and they let it go. We have this oh, reconnecting. Why are we
Can you still hear me?
reconnecting? I'm not able to. I'm not able to see you, and then Are you still there, George?
Yeah, I'm still here. I can see you. Can you see me or
But I
hear
cannot.
me?
I cannot see you. I can hear you, but I cannot see
Okay.
you. Now it says reconnecting. Reconnecting.
Oh, it's probably unstable
Yeah, I'm
connection.
wondering why my internet usually.
Yeah, this one is good
But
too.
I'm wondering if it will record. Yeah, I don't. I wanted to catch your video. Sometimes it might. If I cannot see you, so it might not capture the video.
Hmm.
Oh, so let me see. Do you? We almost at the end. I do want to mention that, but this is not timed anyway. I love the timeless. That's why too. Time and I don't get along. Time and I don't get along. But the real me, yeah, I'm always fighting
Yeah,
time.
yeah. It's
So
it's it's the tyranny of the clock, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
still
It's
spinning. Do you want to come in again, George? Perhaps. Yeah. Do you want to leave the room and come in? I'll do the same and see if it's just because
okay.
I cannot see
Okay.
you anymore. You're not. You're not here.
Okay, let's do that. Okay. All right.
Yeah,
See you in a
thank you.
bit.
So we can just, yeah, we just end in a nice way. So
Okay.
let me leave. I'll
Okay.
end. Yeah, I'll see you in a bit. I can't see you now. So yes, I want to say again that I love your the way you honor animals like dogs. In the end, the dog rescue organizations that you offer them parts of the proceeds. So it's really beautiful. And I want to mention that the reason why I'm very much in love with the world of animals and dogs because they are timeless. And I want to go back to the indigenous wisdom ancient wisdom. I moved to Hawaii for that reason too. So I want to bring this. I'm here for a reason because of when it comes to honoring nature and the changes of nature. I don't think I cannot think of any other culture that did that in the most
Hmm.
harmonious way. That was in indigenous cultures. They really embraced everything with sacredness. Even when they would kill an animal for food, they would pray, for that animal, for the soul of that animal, and give thanks to it. So there is something about that is really kind of resonates deeply with the nature in me because we all nature, as you said, we all nature. We are not apart from nature. So
Right.
yes, thank you for representing that too, that wisdom, because that's what we need more in this relative reality of nature, honoring
Hmm.
what this is for what is too, which is the changing. So why not be compassionate towards one another if we will lose the body one
Absolutely.
of these days, right? If you would,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the indigenous traditions are just reminding us that um, we call it ancient traditions, and I have a problem with that because
Oh,
we
you do.
think, oh yeah, those are
Yeah.
ancient traditions. They're not modern. They're not scientific. So
Mm,
we'll use whatever we like, but we're not going to really
mm,
embrace the whole thing. And
yeah.
that is probably the biggest insult, not only to those traditions, but to ourselves, because we're not allowing ourselves
Mm,
to experience the
mm,
whole understanding of the universe and the way the indigenous traditions continue to see it, right? And we're talking about things like what you're
yeah.
studying, right? And we talked about
Uh,
yoga and we talked about martial arts. All these are ancient traditions that didn't just have one thing that they did, that didn't separate, like Western medicine or Western systems that separate everything was together. So as a martial artist, as I told you, I'm not, I'm not just kicking and punching. I'm also in touch with my soul and with my spirit and with my breathing and with my mind and with the community, right? And protecting others and protecting
yeah.
myself,
Yeah.
protecting the
Yeah.
environment,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so with the traditions that you have been practicing, it's the same thing. And so
Yeah.
it's such a weird thing that we're always separating the ancient traditions, but
The
the
modern.
indigenous cultures that are thriving still and they're still with us, it's a
Mm,
reminder that that we need
mm,
to pay more attention, right?
wow. Yeah. Thank you for saying that. Right. It's so true, though. It's so true. I guess I say ancient. I actually like the word ancient for some reason. I don't know. I don't know why I like it, but ancient. I think it has maybe because it was embodied, as a lot more embodied, their wisdom, and then the
Right.
word ancient wisdom. It kind of comes to me in the now, in this moment, in this spaceless, timeless moment, as something that's real, very real, and can be remembered. It can be relived again because we have lost a lot of that, yeah, in modern times. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. It comes to me as, yeah, it can be, yeah, it can be relived, re-experienced it. And there are some cultures that are still like that. Here in Hawaii, still it happens. But
Right. Yeah.
yeah,
and
but
and
it's
also
it's
I
still
think
here.
the whole Western thing is that sometimes the West looks at indigenous cultures as a failed attempt to be like them, and
Mm.
nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, Western civilization is so new. We are a failed attempt to try to live in harmony,
Oh,
right? We try to
that's
harness the
true.
wind, harness the
Yeah.
sun, harness the what's under, and we're struggling with
Yeah,
that,
that's
right?
true.
And
Yeah.
they don't have to struggle with that, right? um
Mm.
so yeah,
Mm.
we're the ones that are failing, to be able to survive in harmony with nature, right? We're always saying, oh
Yeah.
my god, we're running out of resources, but we're
Yeah.
competing for resources, whereas in the ancient wisdom, right, there's no such thing, right? Everything is
Mm.
everything, right?
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, thank you for the beautiful clarification. Just kind of brought that to my attention. Hmm. Yeah, thank you. Yes. So I want to mention your services, virtual and in-person classes. You have one-on-one coaching, speaking engagements, of course, you're here. And then the
Hmm.
FUCK anxiety method. And
Hmm.
again, your website, selfempowered.ca. And I love the dog rescue
Nice,
initiative. Thank you.
nice,
Again,
nice.
because
Yeah,
very close to
thank
my
you for
heart.
acknowledging.
Yeah. That.
Yeah, I can see that,
Yeah.
right? And yeah, so
Mm.
yeah,
Ah,
we
I
don't.
love my
We
dog.
could talk for hours. Maybe we should do another show about dogs one day.
Yes. And then you bring your dog, I bring my dog, and then we just, yeah, that
Yeah.
would be
Oh,
nice. Yeah, why not?
perfect.
I
We
know.
got to schedule like 10 hours. Set 10 hours
Yeah.
aside for that because we're
Yeah,
gonna
with
be
them
talking
running
like for a
around
long
and
time. Yeah.
distracting. Yeah, life would be so much more playful, right? In a way, George, that way. Yeah, I mean, I'm just like a kid, around my dog, rolling on the floor. I say things that I would never say to a human being, another human, in a sense that I'm not afraid to be judged. The mind is not involved. And then I'm just silly as it can get. I love that. And I love that about like you see, returning to nature, right? More
Right.
spontaneous way of
Yeah.
anyway.
Was it Da Vinci said? I think simplicity is the highest form of complexity. Right. So when we play like that
Mm,
and we're almost like talking like babies and being really simple,
yeah.
that if
Yeah.
you really think about it, actually,
Not easy
I
to be
always
that way.
say that. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. You're about to say something. I'm sorry. Yeah, you're
Oh,
about to say something.
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. But yeah, so play, I think, a lot of people have brought that up, but when we play, and we forget that as adults, but when we play, we're actually training for life, right? If you look at cute little
Mm,
puppies, if you look at wolves in the wild, all these cute little animals in the wild, they're always play fighting, right? But they're
yes.
preparing for life, and
Yes.
and we as humans have that choice. I know you as a personal trainer, somebody that's been in the fitness world, myself too, that
Yeah.
when we work out, it's a form of play, right? I mean, when you play sports, right, it's a form of
Yeah.
play that
Oh
trains you
yeah.
for life. It builds your resilience, right? It's
Yeah.
and dogs will remind you of that when they do their playing, like they're
Mm,
doing, like they're gonna bite you and run away
for
from you.
sure.
It's such a beautiful thing, right?
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah. It really, really is. And I also see in the world of the intellectual conversations, conversations like this, I see the same way. It's like this form of play can be very playful if we are
Right.
open. Like if you're open
Right.
to, whatever it is, if your intellect, if your mind's open. People even say that, being open-minded, that term. So there's
Right.
something that becomes very playful when we start, wow, wait a minute, I never heard it that way. Well, I didn't know that this could be, possible.
Yeah.
I mean, I really love that kind of playfulness too, though. It is very playful to me, to entertain the intellect in conversations
Right.
like this. Is really
Yeah.
something that I really enjoy. I have to say, I appreciate,
Yeah.
enjoy. Yeah,
It's
with the
stimulating, as
body,
they
but
say,
with the
right?
mind. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Certainly
That's
stimulates the soul, right? And the heart, and it
mm,
makes you happy that you're tapping into different ideas and exploring more,
yes,
right? And expanding. It's yeah, it's
yeah.
play. It's just to play with the intellect, with the mind, right? Instead of the body.
That's it. That's it. But you notice that a lot of people, they don't really they're not as playful. They will kind of close the door if you say something. And
Yeah.
most people, they feel kind of defense. They
Right.
become yeah, very defensive sometimes, and that's when it's not fun when they close the door for certain ideas. And yeah.
Yeah, it's a contradiction because most people think that the older they get and the wiser they should be, that the more serious they should be. And that's nothing could be further from the truth. Actually, if you
Mm.
look at the wise Buddhas and people like
Oh
that,
yeah.
the really enlightened ones, they say very few words, and most of them, it's almost like a joke. Almost that makes you
Yes.
laugh to realize that you're being dumb, right?
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
it's like the typical, when you watch, even when you watch in the movies, when the master is teaching the student, in kung fu or something like that, they
Yeah.
say something that almost makes you laugh, like it's a joke they're playing on somebody. So
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
wisdom comes with humor, because humor is it's such a it's a trait of the intellect. People that are highly intellectual
Mm,
and highly very intelligent have a different understanding of humor, right? If you look at
mm.
comedians, very successful comedians, these are
Oh, yes.
comedians like George Carlin, for example, Bill Hicks. These are people that are able to tease out the contradictions in our life and society in a way
Mm,
that makes you laugh, right? and
mm.
and
Yeah.
and they make a living out of teasing out these contradictions in society that only a political scientist or a philosopher would be able to see, right? And so
Right. Yeah.
it is funny how we contradict ourselves without even knowing it sometimes, right?
That's it. Yes, that's it, George. Thank you so much for your beautiful presence. In every way, you just kind of very open to even Vedanta is not for everyone. So I mention every conversation I have here, and a lot of people there, some people there, actually they don't. I already even know not to go too further with it. But thank you so much for being open. So that's the kind of fun that I have in a sense that exchanging kind of knowledge or beyond knowledge even. And
Hmm.
also the work that you're doing has to do with healing, has to do with spirituality, and you're going very deep in a sense of helping people in person and doing online too. So this is I have devotion for that too, because I know there's a lot of suffering in the world and we need all the help that we can get. So thank you for
Absolutely.
doing that. Doing
Yes.
so in this
Yeah.
very end, would you like to make leave a message, the audience with a message? There's anything that you left unsaid? Yeah, this is up to you in the very end.
The opportunity, the final thought, I would just encourage everybody to be kind to themselves. I know that that's something that a lot of people say,
Yeah.
because we think that we're in the worst situation sometimes, but because we can't predict what's going to happen the next minute or the minute after, we need to remain hopeful and optimistic that change is just around the corner, as we already established that change is constant.
Yeah.
To be able to say that's okay, you I might be experiencing a little bit of pain right now, but it's about to change, and I'm just going to try to connect with either nature or my community or my dog or something like that, so that I can make this difficult moment a little bit more pleasant, a little bit more
Yeah.
you know
Mm,
more digestible. um,
mm,
so yeah, patience with oneself, I think it's what I would say: patience and kindness to oneself. And
yeah.
yeah, you're awesome, so keep going. That's what I would say
So,
to each individual, right?
yeah, beautiful. That's so beautiful. Thank you so much again, George, for your presence in our shared
Yeah.
reality. And I'll talk
And
to you
I thank
soon.
you.
I'll talk to you. I'll talk
Okay.
to you off record. But for now, thank
Okay.
you.
Thank
Bye.
you so much. All
Ah,
right. Take care.
mahalo.